Very exciting episode, as I was saying a minute ago. We're looking at work-life balance or work-life harmony, and we have a panel, exciting panel that will be taking us through a number of different experiences they've had, as well as also sharing some strategies with us. So I'd like to sort of introduce the different people that will be speaking tonight. So I'm going to start with Madison uh, Amazu, I beg your pardon, is a structured product middle office transaction analyst. Sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but we're talking about middle office in investment banking at BNP Paribas Corporate Investment Banking in Paris. And Madison is French and working there for 7 years. She's married with two boys, age 5 and 2 years old. Madison, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Right. And I want to go to Joseph very quickly. Joseph Sam is a global award winning digital innovator, tech entrepreneur, and strategic business leader with over 12 years of experience in technology innovation, management consulting, and product leadership. He's held key roles at Fortune 500 companies across North America, Europe, and Africa, including General Electric, Ericsson, and IBM. He's been recognized by the UK government in recent times as an exceptional global talent in digital technology. And he specializes in digital transformation, artificial intelligence, oh, that's a powerful one, and business growth. He's very passionate about technology matters and speaks at international conferences, has a background in electrical engineering and engineering business management, currently lives in the UK with his wife and two daughters. In his downtime, he enjoys watching football and volunteering at his local church. He's also passionate, I thought I would add that, passionate Manchester United fan. Thank you, Joseph, for joining us tonight. And we're going to come to the third person on that, Towella. Um, uh, Tolangambi is the deputy head of school at Arden University School of Leadership and Management, and she's also a chartered psychologist. She also currently at the end of a PhD journey, so it'll be interesting to hear how she juggles all those different things. She's a single mom of two girls, aged 16 and 19. And in her spare time, she enjoys long walks. Thank you, Towella, for joining us as well.
Thank you.
And let's go to Lavinia. Lavinia Diamonds is a seasoned Ghanaian peace and security practitioner with over 30 years' experience in governance, peace, security, and development. As executive director of the West African Network for Peace Building, normally called ONEP, she leads over 100 staff and 750 plus partner institutions across West Africa, focusing on peace infrastructures and early warning systems. She also serves as a peace and security expert on numerous national, continental, and global boards and committees. Beyond her professional work and achievements, she's deeply involved with charitable work, including her church's Christian Services Group supporting the needy. She also mentors young people across Africa through various programs. Vinia has been married for nearly 25 years and is a proud mother of a son. And last but not least, our coach. Dr. Norva Simon Abiona is an award winning relationship and work life balance coach, number one best selling author, a fantastic book indeed, and director of three charities. As a dedicated volunteer in her church youth department, she focuses on prayer and mentorship. She's happily married and a mother of three beautiful girls. Dr. Nova exemplifies the balance she teaches, successfully managing her roles as a businesswoman, a volunteer, and a mother for 2 decades. Wow, this is exciting stuff. The Gen Zs have a lot of issues sometimes, and Dr. Nova, I just wanted to throw that question to you. We don't have a Gen Z rep here. I didn't want to discount the experience of Joseph and Madison by letting them remind us of when they were Gen Zs. But the Gen Zs have a number of issues. I know, based on your personal experience, you've had a Gen Z in your family.
Hmm.
So my question is this: if you think about the different challenges Gen Zs have, um, as they enter the workforce, what do you think are some of the key habits they should develop early to help them maintain a healthy work life balance? Because maybe they're not necessarily be married and all that, but social life and other commitments. How should they be able to handle that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your program once again. And hopefully, you all are hearing me clear. My voice is hoarse, but yeah, the information should come through. Yeah, this is an important question, especially as we move forward in the world. It's one gen after another gen, gen. We are genning out, and every generation brings their own style and flair to things, and where they're dealing with different stuff. Now, Gen Z, because I have a Gen Z child who is now a friend of mine. Um, I understand that in this generation, there are some things that they have to deal with that we didn't have to. So back in the day when you were going into work, maybe you might visit the library or look on the newspaper, but now you have, when you say social, you're not talking about just your environment on the outside. The first thing you think about is social media. I think the first thing Gen Z need to think about is how do they balance that whole dealing with social media, because many of them find themselves addicted to the going on social media, scrolling through. And so they want to do certain things when it comes to career, but they find themselves being addicted to things that they didn't even realize was addictive. So
Mm,
they have to set some priorities. They have to decide to stick to the priorities that they're setting as important. And if you are, for those of us that are Christians, I know it's not the show is not focused on Christian people, but many of us are in the Christian circles. If you try to do everything just based on your own understanding and stuff, many times you find yourself in cycles. And so I believe asking God for help and strength and strategy is important. As I said, beginning to prioritize what is important. Why do I want to do this? What are the desires that I have in the future? And so, what can I do now that would ensure that I have the things that I want in future? Also,
mm,
making sure that you begin to cultivate good relationships with people in your social circles that is going out, even people that you speak to online, but also beginning to speak to people who you respected them in their careers, so that you begin to understand what would be acceptable and not acceptable when you walk into the world of work. You know,
mm.
there's a lot more I could say, but I'll stop there because I think that's enough for them to just begin to chew on.
Right. Okay. Thank you for those of you who've joined us online. Please share the link as well. And of course, if there's more information you need, I'll put an email up towards the end so you can reach out to us through the email, and hopefully we can get some more questions answered. Right. Let me go to Joseph and Madison here, which, for want of a better phrase, I called it Gen Y, kind of a question. And with young families, obviously there's a dynamic over there. Can I first of all start with you, Madison? And maybe if you can start with maybe a small personal story, short personal story of any struggles you probably had in trying to maintain work-life harmony and what you did to overcome it.
Okay. I just want to say, can everybody see me, or is it a little bit too dark? Can you see me?
Well, I guess we can still see you though.
Okay, I'll
But,
put on the light on. Sorry,
okay.
I think maybe it might be better. Can you still see me? Can you
Yes,
see me?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to say first of all, hi to Levinia, Towella, and Dr. Norva and Joseph. I'm very happy to meet all of you. What a privilege to actually share this platform with you guys. So, In terms of challenges, Mr. Rex, I think that there's many challenges that I've had because I'm a financial analyst and I work within a team that is male dominated. I'm practically the only woman in my team. And apart from that, is that I have two boys that are, well, one is has turned just 5, and the other one is 2 years old. So it's very, very tough. And to put it on, I'm only 34 years of age. So when I think about the challenge that I've had recently, would be the activities. Like my eldest, Jacob, he does judo on Monday. He does now swimming on Wednesday, and on Saturday he does football. And what has been a struggle is not getting into the lessons on an everyday basis. It's just that because of the work that I do, it is sometimes heavy because I have to be connected whilst also going to pick up my children from school and then also dropping them to the activity. So one of the examples I can give is a day where I was rushing to get him to do a test for a swimming lesson, and he was absolutely not in the mood to get ready, because what it is that we need to understand that sometimes the child doesn't cooperate. When you ask them to do something, they don't want to do it. So it adds on to the stress that you're already facing, because you're trying to take a quick an hour to an hour 30-minute break to go and get them to that lesson, but the child does not want to cooperate. And I think what happened is that on that day, I was also driving so fast, and I had the policeman behind me putting me to the side and asking me, "Oh, madam, we see that your child is he hasn't got his seatbelt on, because my son had taken his seatbelt on before we got to the place." And they literally were very, very understanding. I think maybe because maybe it was God's presence that day, but I was supposed to come out with a lot of, I would say, sanctions. But because they understood the situation, they let me off. And why am I sharing this story? Because it was a challenge, because it came out with a consequence. And how was I going to resolve the situation without having to have something like that come again? It was just a case of reorganizing myself, and maybe I would say reorganizing the dates that I would take my children to their activities. So, having said that, I had to move the dates from a Wednesday to really a Saturday, because in France on Wednesday, children do not go to school. So they only go to school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday when they are in on when they are in primary school. So what I had to do is that I had to shift most of these days now to Saturday, because Wednesday was normal practical. So that's the solution that I had adopted to overcome that challenge. And also was to reorganize with my husband the dates on which we are able to take them to their activities. So that is how I overcame the challenge. I
Awesome.
hope I answered. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Right. Joseph, let me come to you as well. Without asking you the same question, let me throw a different question to you. What has been your biggest challenge so far? And how did you, what strategies have you used to overcome that?
All right, thank you so much. Just to confirm that you can see me and hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks for having me. I think I'll share some context around my family situation. Hopefully, then I can speak to it. So for me, classical Gen Y millennial as well, I find myself in this dual career couple situation. So both my partner and I are in full-time employment with kids. And fortunately for me, being in the tech industry means that I get to work mostly from home. My challenge was, I remember some years back in one of my previous roles, I was working 100% remotely from home. So I'm at home all the time, which is great, right? Because you get to save in terms of commute time, costs, and even your own energy, right? But then the problem is you always find it difficult to switch off from work, right? Because your office is literally a few steps away from the other room or from the living room. So you find yourself often getting in front of your laptop, let's say 7 a.m., 7:30, instead of the usual 9 a.m., to catch up on some work from the previous day. Likewise, sometimes in the evenings after the kids are in bed, I find myself coming back late at night to catch up on some other work that is not yet done. So effectively, you find yourself working even longer hours compared to if I were to be working in person in an office. Because if once you get home, you can't go back to the office at night, right? So I found myself working longer hours, I found myself resting less, and effectively also spending less time with family. And as you'd imagine, the result was I got burnt out, right? So what I did upon reflection was to realize that I had to be deliberate about when to stop work and to how to let people know that I'm no longer working at a specific time, right? So, for instance, I'll set my out of office in my calendar every single day. So, if you try to send me an email, a message on tools like Slack or Teams, you would instantly get a notification that this person is offline, and therefore people would stop trying to engage you. Likewise, what I tried to do was to actually shut down my laptop rather than just sleep the laptop, right? So it just makes it harder or to increase the friction for me to come back to work, because I now have to turn it on, wait for everything to load, log into a million different systems before I can start work. So that kind of like helped me avoid coming back, or the temptation to say, oh, let me just check this thing quickly and come back, right? And also, one strategy which I would recommend is if you are in the type of role or the work situation that allows you to determine the pace of your work and your own schedule in terms of which work you will do first and which tasks you tackle later, then my approach, which I adopted, was to start doing what we call deep work earlier in the day. So deep work is this concept of certain types of tasks that require a long period of unbroken concentration, right? So there are things you can do in 5 minutes, maybe check an email, then you switch attention to do something else. There are other things that require that you sit down, study, open some documents, and spend time thinking or writing a piece of report, and you zoom in for hours. So what I decided to do was to do those tasks earlier in the day, because those tasks actually take a huge chunk of your engage a huge part of your mental capacity. And even when you're done with that work, because of the level of depth that you've gone to it and the level of concentration, it actually takes your brain a bit of time to finally disengage. So if you do this close to the end of your day, you may physically not be sitting in front of your laptop, but then your mind is still processing what you just put together, right? So I shifted deep work to earlier in the day as much as possible, so that towards the end of my day, it's just the lighter tasks, and then gradually wind and switch off, or transition from work to off work or to family and other things. So I think that really did help me a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Um, So obviously you've touched on the issue of technology. Technology obviously helps somebody like you with your work, to be able to work from, even though you have the other side of it where you seem like you're working too much, right? Madison, let me come back to you on that. In your role, do you sometimes work from home as well? And if you do, I mean, how do you prioritize your work commitments versus family if it's different from what Joseph has just said?
Okay. Yes, so we've had an agreement with, I think the bank has had an agreement where we can do some working from home. To be honest, we have like a lot of days that we can work from home. We have a minimum of 2 days working from home per week. So that helps actually quite a lot, because when you uh, have to maybe pick up the kids, what I have, to be honest, in my team, they're really quite lenient because most of them have kids. So when it comes to picking up with the kids, it does help than being in the office 5 days a week. So it's good. I do agree as well with Joseph that it is sometimes hard because of the nature of the role. I think it depends on what job you have, and because my role consists of raising capital for firms, and it's involved in trading, so it's actually quite a tough job to hack in. So the question was, how do I prioritize to ensure that the life balance is managed? Is that what you
That's
meant?
right. That's correct. Yes.
So how I prioritize is that I work actually from Monday to Friday, and most of the transactions, should I say, the portfolios that I manage in terms of the deals, I manage them quite well because I know them. So because be, I would say quite senior, I think that is what helps me a lot, because I have mastered what needs to be done in terms of the day-to-day task and the analysis that I need to do. So I definitely prioritize what needs to be done early in the morning, and in the afternoon is generally anything that is soft, which is just generally my check-ins. Now, if I have to go overboard, because I have to be honest that because my son is at nursery, the second one, and the first one is in primary school. The first one finishes at 4, and the second one finishes at 4:30. So what I did is that I managed to, because they're quite close in terms of the two institutions, I made sure that the times are quite close. So Noah will finish at 4. I'll collect him. As soon as I finish collecting him, I'll collect the first one. And when they arrive, I will get them cleaned, make sure that they're ready, sitting down. And then once I finish giving them their dinner, because we do eat quite early here at my house, when they finish having their dinner, I will actually connect back, because I have that ability to do so, because I don't have to badge or connect, or should I say record my times, because I'm on we call it forfait in French, which is kind of like I don't know how you say it in English, but it's a type of contract, permanent contract, where you do your hours, you do your work, and it doesn't need to be fixed to a specific time. So therefore, I'm allowed to work till 10, 11 p.m., even midnight or 1, or I'm allowed also to finish early, 3, 4 p.m., even 2 p.m. So that flexibility that I have in terms of my contract enables me to switch off and to even take breaks, ensure that the kids are fine in bed by 8:30 p.m. and then reconnect. But one thing that I would highlight is that Saturday and Sunday, I do not open my laptop at all. I don't open my laptop, and my work phone hardly rings, because I think everybody knows the schedules when you're online and offline. So on weekends, I do not open at all my laptop or work. And also when I go on holidays, because I plan that a lot as well with my kids and my husband, I don't also bring work when it comes to holidays. I'm quite disciplined. I think discipline is one of the things that we need to have, because if we don't have that discipline, then it goes into uh, I would say all over the place. So I have that quite disciplined, but I do let know as well that to my husband that the role that I do, which he's fully aware, does require me to sometimes sleep quite late, because I have to finish some stuff quite late. And I think to compensate that is the fact that the weekends I'm totally dedicated to my family. And I'm also dedicated to my family during the holidays. In France, there's a lot of holidays. We have 2 weeks holidays right now, going from the 19th of October to the 2nd of November. Then we have 2 weeks again for the Christmas and New Year's Eve. Then we have 2 weeks again in February. Then we have 2 weeks again in April. So I think the system, in terms of culture and the country, helps a lot, because in France, they've got that culture of not working past 35 hours. So when you have that kind of culture, it does help to have family as well to the side, because it's a governmental kind of thing that's been institutionalized. So that helps quite a lot, because what we do at work is that I always take a week off during the school holidays. So my kids always have me for a week out of the 2 weeks. And when
Mm.
I mean a week, it's Monday to Sunday.
Mm.
and again, my laptop is off at that time.
Awesome.
So I think
Wow.
I answer your question.
Awesome. Very good. Let me throw one more question to both of you here. Obviously, the priorities seem, you've talked about work, you've talked about family, you've
Hmm.
brought in holidays and all that. But
Hmm.
I know, looking at your profiles and obviously knowing both of you, that you have other personal commitments as
Yeah,
well. So,
that's true.
how do you bring in that factor? And how much does it weigh in? Say,
Mm,
for instance, maybe, okay, I'll leave you to speak, and then
yeah.
Joseph can add his bit as well. Yeah.
Okay. So that's so interesting. I mean, thank you so much, Mr. Rex. Because what I've started now is that I'm actually a full committed, uh, I would say, member in terms of the African politics in my country, Ivory Coast. I
Hmm.
actually work for Tijan Tiam. I don't know if a lot of people know. Tijan Tiam used to be CEO of Prudential and Credit Suisse, and is now running for the elections in Ivory Coast for the October 2025. And to be honest, he's actually my boss also when in terms of personal activities, because I actually run some of the reports, financial reports, and I also work with a lot of other members that have joined that are young like me and also senior. And I have to say that it actually weighs in a lot, because politics does take you time and can go over to 2 to 3 a.m. But this is something where I have to say that I have installed communication before entering politics, which I entered the 18th of December 2023. I had a discussion with my husband. That was the first person that I discussed this with. I said that I have ambitions to actually impact in for the Ivory Coast. I have a lot of things that I have to give. Do you support me? Do you agree with this ambition? Should we pray about it? And how do you want us to go about it? What are the boundaries that we're gonna take from this, that so that I don't neglect my family, because I absolutely love it. It's a, to be able to work for my country till tomorrow. I'm absolutely passionate about it, and I honestly don't feel that something that I love to do, to give back, should make me negligent or any less loving towards my family and my husband and anything else that I need to do. So I've had a discussion. After having a discussion with my husband, which we prayed about it and we was okay with it, I then informed my family. I think family is very important, because when you inform families like my mom, my dad, my aunties, my uncles, these type of close knit families tend to help you. I've had many meetings where my husband has had to go to work and my family have stepped in to look after my kids. I've said, okay, I've got to be joining this meeting. Is it possible for you to keep the boys for 2 hours because Mr. has to go to work? And they've been absolutely welcoming to the idea, because I communicated and I got everyone involved. I kind of asked everybody's permission to carry me with them on this journey, because they know that tomorrow, if we are winning, they are all going to benefit, because they're happy to see their niece, their daughter, especially my grandparents. I had to tell them as well. So also their grandchild,
Mm.
take such a high place in society. So these type of personal commitments that we have, whether it's a level where I am or a smaller level, it's important to get the right participants. When I mean
Mm.
participant, in terms of the parties involved, whether it's your
Mm.
husband or your family, the right
Mm.
people to help you and
Mhm.
discuss it with them, because they always appreciate that. And since I've discussed that, everybody has given me their blessing,
Mhm.
and we've been able to cooperate in that manner. So it's helped me a lot in terms of respecting
Mm.
meetings and respecting also my life with my partner. So what I do as well, as a last note, is that my phone as well gets locked off after a certain hour and it's left in the living room. It doesn't go to the bedroom. So
Mm.
that's another solution that I've adopted now to ensure that there's harmony and that nothing is over gate crashing another one's intimacy, especially because I'm married. So
Mhm.
I have to take that on board. That I'm
Mhm.
also my first ministry is also at home. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. I like that phrase. That your first ministry is also at home. Joseph, can you chip in here before we go to another group question? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I re-echo a lot of what Madison has said. First of all, I think she's giving us a great tip that we should all move to France, right? Because there's a lot of holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I actually heard that in France, the French work to live, they don't live to work, as
Mm,
typified by the others in the Western societies, like contrasting that with the US, where they often
Yeah.
live to work, but in France, you work to live. So big difference. But I guess from my side, it's as Madison said, it's about having those frank, open conversations with the stakeholders. So usually it's your
Mm,
partner, it's your kids, it's other people who sort of have demands for your time. For people who are typically of a religious persuasion, you would find that you in the religious communities, there's always that encouragement from the pulpit or from the leadership to fully participate in tons of church activities. Yes, they are helpful. Yes, they're edifying, but you would have to learn how to draw that balance, right? You would have to manage the expectation that I can fully commit to this, but not to that, and figure out how to do this logically without feeling guilty, right? And let me mention that this is not a one-time activity. So these conversations are not something you have, let's say, once a year or once a month, but you have it on an ongoing basis,
mm,
because there will be different seasons of your life. There will be seasons
mhm,
where you need to do less work, and therefore you are
mhm,
more available to do
mhm,
things for the family and friends. And there are times when you just have to spend more time working because of certain projects or certain deadlines, etc. And so in those periods, you find yourself spending more time at work or not being as available to the family as possible. So having these conversations on a frequent basis and usually having it ahead of time can help all of you to prepare and understand how much effort and time you can make for the family, and that way everyone there are no disappointments or any resentments and things like that. So communication is definitely a key one, and just be true to yourself, right? People would always place expectations on you and of your time, but you have to always do what's best and to be protective of your time.
awesome. Thank you so much. I like the one-liners that you guys close with. Thank you so much. Before we move on to another group, and thank you again to both of you for your questions. I'm going to ask Dr. Norva in the Gen Y area. What can millennials do? I know Madison and Joseph has said some stuff to avoid early burnout, especially because they also want to, on one side, I want to build my career. You hear all these messages from motivational speakers in pulpits that you got to go for it, and yet you have a family. How does the balance come?
Yeah, I suppose that's touching on the dual career and that generation,
Right.
why, as you said, it's when you hear what you're talking about, you realize it's a lot that
Mm,
people we have to deal with in this world, and many times trying to keep up with that can be daunting and frustrating if you don't decide to be decisive, to be deliberate in the way you do things. Especially when you're in a relationship, you have to speak to your spouse. You must decide that we are in this together. We are
mm,
going to be doing things to build together. It's for the betterment of the family. It's for us growing, because sadly, a lot of people, they get into career, all good intentions. I'm doing it for the family and stuff. And then after a while, you can get so caught up in what you're doing that your relationship with your family suffers, especially when it comes to the relationship with your spouse. When that begins to break down, it affects the children as well, if you have children.
mm,
And of course, it affects the in laws, all the family and stuff, because people have to choose sides. So you have to make sure that communicating with your spouse is important, that you all have regular check ins as well. I would also say sometimes it's good to have um, external support, either together or at least for you as individuals, having mentors and stuff in place, people who can really support you and give you the opportunity to learn certain things so that you don't have to go down the long route. Like when people tell you that these are the things that need to be done, I did this. It took me a while, but if you do this and this, you can get there faster. Then you are really working on shrinking the time you take to do certain things. You also need to have communicate with your children. That's important. But for the generation itself, I think making sure that self-care, Generation Y, self-care is important
Mm,
because many times we can just take care of everybody
mm,
and we forget ourselves. And
mm,
this is something big, especially for women, where we put everybody first. You come home after working hard, and then you're still, because you feel like you're obligated to do certain things, you're doing it. And then after a while, your health is suffering. So you have to consider, does self care mean my husband and I doing things together? Or sometimes I'm doing things with my girlfriends as well. For the
mm,
guys, sometimes I'm going out with the guys.
mm,
Put those things in place. I think making sure that your spiritual life as well, you set aside time for those things. This is not just working in church, but making sure that your relationship with God, having that place where you can speak to God, get advice, get support. Also having clear goals. And this is why when you speak to your spouse, so he knows your goal, she knows
mm,
your goal, you all can decide together what are the things we tackle first, when we tackle it, and establishing clear boundaries. Saying to the people at work, as
mm,
Madison said, this is when I stop. Yeah, and this is when I start. And when, if something comes up, because sometimes an emergency can come up
mm,
and you deal with it. But remember that those things should be one off. If it's happening on a regular occurrence, what you are doing is causing people to develop bad habits that would affect you and your family. So you have to be very careful about those things.
mm.
Thank you. Very insightful. Thank you so much for that. Wow. Audience, I hope you're benefiting from the questions that and the answers that have been coming forth so far. Thank you so much. Madison and Joseph, thank you for that segment that you did. I want to come to Towella now. Towella, I have just a few questions here that I wanted to throw to you. First of all, maybe if you could share a personal story of how you struggled to maintain work-life balance and what you did to overcome it, maybe more from the perspective of maybe being a single mom.
Yes, sure. I think the most recent example is when I took on my doctoral studies. Um, so I think the difficulty there was where to find the time in order for me to. I had underestimated how much time it might actually take. So that was a challenge. And at the same time, when I started, my daughter was going into her GCSE year, my older daughter. So that was it was very, very challenging in terms of when do I give her support? Because we often think maybe teenagers don't need our support. Actually, they need much more support than toddlers, in my opinion. And so it was finding that time. So that was quite challenging. But like everybody has said, it was a matter of communicating with my daughter, and also syncing our diaries, if I can use that word. So if I take her for her classes, her GCSE, most of us take our children for GCSE extra lessons. So if I take her for those classes, that would then be my time while she's in that class and I'm parked in the car. That might be my time to study as well, or I might find a coffee shop where I can sit down and study. I mean, more recently, my younger daughter's just finished her GCSEs as well, and that time I've been using for my walks, for my self-care. So it became that Saturday morning for the classes has become sort of my time. I also scheduled in time Sunday afternoon after everything has settled down for me to work on my my thesis or any classwork I was given. And I deliberately took a doctorate rather than a PhD, because with a doctorate, and this is to everyone, with a doctorate you have classes. And having classes means you have colleagues, and you have taught sessions, which means it's a little bit better than being on your own trying to figure out how to put together your theses. So those helped me. That's what helped me. I just wanted to say, I think being a what can I call it? I'm not a lone parent. I parent with the Holy Spirit by the grace of God. So with that, I just plan everything in using digital tools such as Outlook. As everybody has said, everything is planned in, including special time with the children. I have individual time with both of them. Then we have joint time, and everything is planned in. I do this every, perhaps at the end of each month, I start to think about what I'll be doing, when I'll have my classes, when I'll cook. It's little things like cooking, pre-made, doing all my prep. When am I doing that prep? And if we have to have Uber Eats, we have to have Uber Eats, because I just want to say to parents out there are days when it's just not perfect. It's not going to plan. And I don't want people to feel guilty, because it's that guilt sometimes that you spend more time on and more energy on than actually getting your goals met. So I think if things are going haywire, as somebody said earlier, I think it was Sister Norva, don't let it become a habit, because then, you have to have that sort of meeting with yourself about what's going on. But yeah, I think planning, using as many digital tools as you can. So I manage a team, and I find it useful to get up earlier and delegate what the team are going to do. So delegation is important. And that also includes delegating to my children what they will do. Is someone going to prep for me? They're at the age where they can prep meals. They're at the age where they can cook something for me. They're at the age where there's chores to be done. So all those, the delegation, especially for my team at work, I do it very early in the morning. Then the rest of the day, I take breaks. I learned this from Generation Y and Z, actually, about using your diary, your Outlook, just to. One of my Gen Z, I think she's Z, reportees has in her diary mental health walk. And I thought, what's that? You need to be back here and do this and this. Then I realized that, no, that's the time on every Friday, she sets aside time in the diary. It's allowed at work for her to do her mental health walk, or just a pause for the day. And I respect that. It doesn't take away from the working hours. So I respect that. So I started to do the same. And the other one is quiet time. These are all new words that have come up in the last 2 to 3 years, I would imagine. Quiet time. That's the time, Brother X, I spend reading, because my job also is in academia, needs reading. I need to read and review papers, and I need to analyze and perhaps make a commentary. More recently, I was looking at how AI affects academic misconduct. So I had several papers to review and then put together. So that's when I have my quiet time. And it's great. It's good to have quiet time in the morning. But if you can't, because you're parenting with the Holy Spirit, as I said earlier, you can, just swap things around if you have to. My Bible time is if I'm driving into work, to the station, even if I just manage to listen to a verse, that's enough for me. I manage to listen to a message, that's enough for me. So it's being flexible. The other one I wanted to point out, Brother X, is being able to ask for help when you need it. There are other parents who are out there who are parenting in the same way, parenting with the Holy Spirit. ask for help and swap, so if you pick my kids on a Monday, I'll pick yours on a Tuesday. Working together as sisters, I think that helped me when my children were in primary school. So I think, yeah, those are my tips. I don't know if I've gone off the
No, thank you so much for. I mean, you went deep into it. Didn't go off track. You actually went
Yes.
deep
All
into
right.
that. So thank you so much for that. I think you've touched on one or two other things that I wanted to. But let me ask this question though: what specific or unique challenges do you think you've talked as a parent, you've talked as a Gen X, and all that? Single parents facing maintaining work-life harmony, and what support systems you talked about outlook, but are there any other support systems that help in a scenario like that?
Yes, there are many these days. There are many groups out there that so sort of like a single parents network. There are WhatsApp groups. You don't really have to go, and in there, people discuss challenges, maybe around parenting, maybe something new that's come up. Most recently in my area, children were abusing nitrous oxide. I only found out from that sort of WhatsApp group because maybe I haven't got the time to find out. And then I had that conversation with my children. So it's things like that. Particular challenges, I would say the number one is looking after everybody else apart from you. I think that's the main challenge. But if you're broken, you really can't look after everybody else. It's that old saying, if you're not full, how can you pour out of yourself? So I think that's the main challenge. It's that setting aside time for yourself, a quick coffee. It doesn't have to be in a coffee shop, as I said earlier. It can just be at home, reflecting, having a quick coffee, a walk. I prefer walks now as I get younger, so I prefer walks. But yeah, just having that time for yourself, I think, is the greatest challenge in terms of balancing. Um, because because you're so aware that physically you're parenting on your own, you invest a lot of time in the children, in activities, and you really do forget about yourself, about exercising, about your mental health. So I think that's the main challenge, there. So the support groups are there. There's the church. There's networks out there. There's some of them are online, some are offline. In some schools, there's also support in the schools as well if you wanted extra support. I'm trying to think, but yeah, there's quite a lot of help. Friends, family, they will help, they will step in, but you have to communicate, as someone mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I wanted to throw one more question to you, if you don't mind, and that had to do with because you teaching and you in the academic field and all that. If you could speak to students, you often find sometimes in the world in which we live. Today, students juggle. In my days of going to uni, you went to uni 100%. You didn't work, you didn't do anything else. But these days, you work, you have family, and then you have to study as well. And you find people that I can't do it. I'm just going to give up. What can you speak to that situation? What advice can you give to people in that scenario?
Yes, so the university that I teach in is, in particular, has a lot of students in that group that work and study at the same time. So I would say, first of all, don't give up. As the academic team, we want students to do well. So speak up, speak to your lecturers, speak to your student services in your university. Speak to them. There's tools that, well, there's a lot of support out there. There could be an extension on your assignment. I do that quite often with mine. I can extend my assignment and just say, listen, I know I said that by this date I would have finished 2 chapters. I think I'll only be able to finish 1. And everybody understands nowadays that we're juggling. Another thing is, I've assigned a specific day, and I think it really works well for me. Sunday afternoon, I start from 2 up to 6. and I'm just focused on my schoolwork. And my children now know that that's my special time for my schoolwork. And I notice they do the same. They've got a day when they go, oh, today is my day for physics or whatever. So I've noticed that. So just having a specific time for yourself, where you've set that time. If you look at your diary, sometimes we find that there's times we are maybe binge watching something on Netflix. So that's extra time. You need to do a time audit as a student. This is a new thing. And you asked earlier, I forgot about that. I forgot that when I first started, I thought I haven't got the time. But when I conducted a time audit, I noticed that a bit of, my online time or my time on my phone, because there's tools now, I noticed that was quite a lot of time, I'm ashamed to say. So my social media time had to be cut, so that I could then, apportion that time to my studies. So students out there, don't give up. There's support, first of all, in your university, but also you can have a look at having a time audit. And then thirdly, just assign a specific day that puts you into that habit, or someone used the word discipline, of even if you're just going to write 3 sentences in those 4 hours, because it's happened to me before. I've had writer's block and nothing's come out, but you still keep to that time, and eventually it all works out. Yeah, I hope that's
Awesome. Very good advice. I hope for any students there who would watch it or watching it, I hope you take that advice on board so you can make your dreams happen. Right. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Brother Rex, I forgot to say thank you
Right.
so much for having me on here.
Right.
I was just very engrossed in what everyone else was saying. It's a really wonderful panel, and I've learned a lot so far. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too. Thank you so much for that. Right. You've already said we shouldn't feel guilty about having time for ourselves, and I think that's very important. Um, I think in one of my conversations with Dr. Norva some time ago, I'm happy to say it here, Dr. Norva. I think you were the first to tell me that I matter as well. It's not all about family and everything else, but you as an individual also it's very important as well. So for you, Towella, it's like sometimes people expect that, okay, or I want to prove something. I can make it. I can handle them by myself. So no matter what it's going to take, even if you're hanging on by a thread, and
Yes.
that can be an issue there. Dr. Nova, if you can speak to that, I mean, apart from what Towella has already said there, I mean, what can they do for themselves that will make them feel less overwhelmed? Because sometimes you hear this, and I think I probably have asked you this question before when I'd have some of my female clients, and they would say things like, I have a lot going on. I have a lot going on. So what does this I have a lot going on mean? So how do people manage all that stuff?
Yes, sometimes we don't want to admit that when we're saying we have a lot going on, what we're really saying is that we haven't prioritized effectively. And also, we are afraid sometimes to say no to some people because we believe that their response to us will cause them to look at us in a bad light, which is not the case. You know, if we decide, and I think you can give it like a 3 months in advance kind of decision. But if we decide that we're going to take time off on a regular basis, it's better than you crash and burn. And then you think, I can take a month off. For example, if you don't sleep for a week and then you decide I'm going to sleep for an entire day, how is that working out for you? It's not good. You'll end up really, really sick. So the same way we need sleep on a regular basis is the same way we need to take time off. So, for example, in my family, every 2 months we do something. My husband and I, we go out, go abroad or go stay at a hotel, do something. 2 months, the next 2 months is the entire family. Next 2 months, my husband and I, next 2 months, the entire family. And sometimes when my husband and I are doing something, my eldest daughter is doing something with the younger ones, or she take them away and they go and do something together. But these times are important because people begin to respect that you have a life, you have family. And if you don't set that up, then even though they might be laughing at you behind your back, saying she has no life, they will use you to the bone until you are of no good to yourself or anybody else. And so you have to be very careful. You have to decide to set aside time. And you also want your children to see that this is important, that making sure that I take care of me, that mommy takes care of herself, that daddy takes care of himself, so that as they're growing up, they begin to do that. And then you instill that in them as well. Set aside time to play, but set aside time to do your work. So it's something that becomes a norm in your family.
Hmm. Awesome. Very, very, very insightful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Towella, and thank you, Dr. Norva, as well for that part of it. I know we've touched on some things on dual career, but let me come to Gen X. I know some of you have spoken about Gen X already, but I want to pick up a few things. Lavinia, I'm going to come to you now. Um, I'm not going to ask you to share a personal story. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I look at your profile of yours, I wonder how you find time for just about anything, you know. So maybe let's pick it up because the other question I had was, first of all, how do you deal with that? And then, of course, for some Gen Xers, they start having to think about caregiving, older parents and all that. That's a factor that maybe younger people don't think about. But Lavinia, if you can go on that first. I mean, how do you manage with all these different things, local, national, global, whatever, you know?
Well, let me also start by saying good evening and hello to everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
thank you all for sharing parts of your stories. Listening, I'm smiling at a lot of the things because, I can identify with a number of the things that each one of you have said. And how do I manage? And so let me probably start with something that could probably be considered as one of those challenging personal stories you're talking about, because I think for me that was the turning point in terms of how I manage. So yes, I have been working for 30 years now, and that in the 30 years I've spent a lot of it traveling, more than I have been on the surface of the earth. And I remember when my son was probably about 9 years old. And so I would always travel, leave him. Before I had my son, of course, traveling was not something that I thought too much about. I just picked my stuff and go. I always had, a spare bag in the office. So as soon as I have to go, I just get on board and go. But once I had my son, then of course it was a different story. And yet I had to do a lot of traveling. And so I found myself feeling very anxious, feeling a lot of fear anytime I had to travel, thinking through what's going to happen to him, is he going to be okay, and so on and so forth. And I remember a particular day I had traveled out of Ghana, and of course, that fear was in me, that anxiety was there. And so I remember I said, let me call back home and check on him. And this was when iPhone, I think at the time, was one of the first to have tracking services, tracking facilities. And so I had given him an iPhone, my older iPhone, and I could track it. And I remember I called back home. I called my husband, he didn't pick his phone. I called my son's, phone, he didn't pick it. I called family members, my sister, she didn't pick her phone. Nobody was picking their phone. And now, because I had this fear in me, already I said something bad had happened to my son, and nobody wanted to pick the call and let me know what was going on. Believe it or not, I decided to track my son's phone. And I look on the phone, and strangely, the phone tells me that my son is in a hospital. That's what I saw on my phone. And I remember I was looking at the phone and I said, so this is why nobody is picking my calls. I kept calling and calling. Eventually, one of my nieces picked the call. And when she picked the call, and I said to her, what's wrong with my son? And I remember she chuckled and said, what's wrong with your son? There's nothing wrong with him. And I said, tell me, what is going on? Where is your mom? Who, that's my sister. And she said my sister was asleep. This was about 7 something p.m. Ghana time. And I said, no, she can't be asleep. I need to talk to her. And she kept insisting my sister was asleep. And so, long story short, I concluded something terrible had happened to my son and nobody wanted to tell me. And so then I just said, you know, let me check the phone again. I checked the phone again. And now it shows me that my son is in my mom's house. You know, and I say this because I remember then I was listening to a preacher who was talking about how, you know, your fears really can manifest all sorts of things for you. And so I remember I just said to myself, what is this where I've gotten to? And that for me was a very critical moment. And I told myself, no, I've got to manage it. I am not managing because I am so afraid, so anxious, so nervous. I'm always thinking of what could go wrong when I travel. How about turn it around to what could you be gaining when you travel? Flip it around. And so that's how I started slowly and mentally trying to shift towards looking at, okay, what are the positives? Or looking at the glass half full to say, okay, I'm not here. This and that may not happen, but something else could happen, or it's not that bad. And I have to say, talking about help, I feel I'm one of those who's been helped a lot, by God, because I have been fortunate. I've never had to have a nanny for my son. I've been fortunate to have family members around who have always supported me. And so I said to myself, I am much better than so many other people. And yet, why am I afraid? So I realized that how I manage my own emotions was the starting point for me in terms of how I manage. Of course, I get physically drained. No two ways about that. As we speak, you probably have seen me on my phone because I'm trying to negotiate changing a flight that is more relaxing for me. I have to travel very at dawn on Monday, and I'm trying to negotiate something more less stressful. So that's where I think it starts from, how you manage your own emotions around this so that you do not feel that overwhelmed. I think for me, it's half of the problem solved, but of course, there are still challenges along the way.
Good. Thank you so much for that. Right. You've talked about family helping you, so which is great. Not everybody may be that lucky to have family helping them, So I guess we talked about the benefit of going to France, go to be where Madison is, but I guess that's the benefit of also being in Africa. Having
Oh,
family
yes.
to support you there. Um, but what long term? I mean, you made a very profound statement there that you spend more time in the air than on the ground. And I'm like, okay, so how do you avoid burnout? Because I know people who travel a lot. Sometimes you forget what the time is or which country you're in. uh, yeah, I'm not going to ask you how often you travel, but I know you travel quite a bit. So, how do you bring about that harmony with family? What do you do when you get back home after a trip? Because I know there have been times when you've landed and then maybe 2 days later you're off again. So how do you use that time in between and stuff like that for family?
Well, I think for me, even while I'm away, I like I said, I try to build systems that make me feel like I'm not far away.
Okay.
So the first thing is I share everything, where I'm going, why I'm going, what I'm doing. Sometimes I overshare as soon as I land. I just describing my hotel, doing a video call, just so that it feels like okay, I'm still around. So that's it. But of course, physically, once I get back, it can be very challenging, as you described, that sometimes I almost immediately have to leave and therefore don't have enough time. But it's little things like making sure that maybe I decide to go drop my son at school so that I have a few more minutes to spend with him before I travel out. And incidentally, there was now less so, but there was a time when my husband was also traveling a lot. So we had to also work it out in such a way that sometimes I come back and then he goes and then he comes back before I go. We had to negotiate that also with our employers, and also it's a bag of different challenges. But it's about the few moments that I'm in the house trying to find something to do. One of the things is playing board games. So that's something that sometimes I'm sleepy and tired, but I have to push myself a bit more, to do that. As I said, things that are part of our everyday life, going to drop somebody at school, choosing to be the one to go drop my son at school, just so that I can have a bit more time with him. From church, trying to look for something to do, go to a restaurant for a meal instead of coming home for a meal, even though there's food at home, just deciding to spend a little bit more money, because once you get home, again, don't forget that while I'm away, things have also piled up at home. And once I find myself at home, I find myself having to do something. So also using the opportunity, maybe don't come home, because once you get home, you find something else to do other than sitting and spending time with family. So it's I think it was Towella who mentioned that you've got to be extremely intentional about these things, and it's about identifying the tiniest and the most the simplest of things, and using all these as opportunities for doing something together, you know and it's not again necessarily how long, but it's the quality of it. So sometimes even when we're sitting in the car, we play like car games. What color of cars? Choose a color. Who gets the most colored cars? And things like that. Car number plates. Just different things in that short moment that are things that are a bit impactful. I think is how we've tried to manage.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. What about for yourself? How do you get to relax, or do you relaxing when you get to the hotels? What do you have a me time?
I have to confess that's where I haven't done very well.
Okay.
But I, again, talking about having been helped and having had different types of helpers come along my path. Um, so I have a group of friends from my neighborhood, and these are people that are high on me time. So they have dragged me into that consciousness of a me time. And sometimes it's not I'm not alone, but maybe I'm with them. So they're a group of ladies, and these are all very professional ladies, global and award-winning ladies, and so on. So we try to spend some time together at least once a month. So the me time is not necessarily alone, but it's also with a few people, because the me time where I want to read and so on, I have to be honest, I struggle to find time to do that. My work involves also a lot of reading, and so talking about guilt, to pick up a book and read, I feel like I have so many other documents I need to read. So that's difficult. So now it's looking at doing things with other people that helps me to also enjoy myself. One of the things that I've taken up also recently is painting. And so with these lady friends, we do a lot of paint and sip sessions, which is very helpful.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to throw a question here, and any of the Gen X's can answer the question, either Towella, Dr. Norva, or Levinia here. Looking back, what has been your perspective? Has your perspective on work life harmony changed over the years, and what advice would you give to younger generations? Any of you
Better.
can go first. Yeah.
Well, I can start. I mean, for
Okay.
me, it definitely um, has changed from when I started working. I always knew about work life harmony. It was something that you talked about, My perspective at the time was that yes, it's important, but it's not necessarily realistic for that to happen. And but I think once I crossed 40, I think I started seeing it differently, that it is actually possible. It's about how you frame, how you frame your priorities, and how you frame how to, engage those priorities. And I think for me, it was also at that point that I realized the importance of asking for help,
Mm.
asking,
Okay.
by help, the help also includes not just helping me with family things or getting things done, but it's also help in terms of, listen, I find myself, I feel I'm overwhelmed. I feel I'm not achieving anything. Talking to people, finding out, how do I deal with me? So it's a combination of those various realizations that shifted me into a new era of, it is actually very possible.
Mm.
Most of it depends on me and how I define, what is priority, and also how I seek that help, because I can't do it alone. It's impossible.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was
Towella, Dr. Nova. Yep. Mhm.
yes, I was going to say that you might have heard me use the phrase before, Rex, your unique life fusion. This is a phrase that I coined some years ago. And I suppose to explain what it is, I'll tell you the ingredients. So years ago, you would hear people talk about work-life balance all the time. And I thought it just had to do with juggling all the things that you're doing. But I realize now that there is work-life balance, and then after the balance, there still has to be the harmony. So the balance is the different things that you're doing. The harmony is how you begin to think about how much of this and how much of that you add. And then when you bring it together, so all the ingredients and then you mix it together, that's how you get the fusion, by sticking it in your own family oven and
Mm.
making it work for you. But you must have um be clearly identify the things that you have as part of your ingredient. Every family is different. As we know, even on the panel, we have some that are married, some that are not, two people working, one person working. So what are those things in your home? And then, without feeling guilty, do I put more focus on children at present? Do I put more focus on work at present? You have to know the season that you're in. You have to communicate with the people around you. And then as you bring these things together, you begin to realize that jealousy doesn't have to come in, because you can admire other people, but what works for them would not always work for you. So that is what is different for me now. When I think about balance, for me now, it's the unique life fusion that
Mhm.
works for me and my household.
Awesome. Wow. Okay.
Yes, and
Towella.
just
Yeah.
yeah, just to add to that, I feel that harmony is really important for wellness generally, and I think that's where my perspective has changed, where I've realized having that harmony is really key to my wellness, my overall happiness as an individual, and that's where I think that's where it's changed over the years. And the other area is where I think where it's changed is, yeah, just, use every tool that's out there, in order for you to balance. Don't feel guilty. You talked about, I think initially when you start parenting on your own, I think the ego tells you to make sure everybody knows you can do it and you're the champion and you're a strong Black woman or whatever it is. There's no such thing. You need to be asking for that help, and that's the way forward. And I think that's where things have changed for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the different insights, Lavinia, Towella, and Dr. Nova. Um, coming to the closing areas here very quickly. I wanted to put up something. Dr. Nova, I wanted you to kindly address this. Let's see if I can get it up with the video.
I believe in what I call the Pareto principle, which is 80-20. 80% of my time may be in Africa, but when I'm home, I am really, really home. I want my wife to feel that I am home. I want everything I do to show that I'm home. Instead of being there 80% of your time, and you're really not home. So many times people think what should be is that you are always available, and that doesn't make impact. So it is the quality of time, not the quantity of time.
Right. Do you agree?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
as
I
I was
agree.
hearing it, the
I
first
agree.
the first thing that came to mind for me is that song, I'm unavailable. Yeah. I
Yes.
I hear clearly what he's saying, and I think I wouldn't say that this is the way it has to be,
Mm-hmm.
but the 80-20 rule is true.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
That where you spend 20% of your time, many times that's where the main priority and focus should be,
mm,
and you will get the most out of it.
mm,
Um, and if for somebody like Pastor Matthew, who he travels a lot, I think what he's really saying is when I am here, I am here. And if we take that on board so that people know they have our undivided attention, then that is an important thing. Even when you decide, I'm going to take some me time, you want to give yourself, even if it's 20%, 5%, or whatever of your day, make sure that you're really spending it doing what you want to do. Make sure that you're resting, and it's not at that time somebody call you and you decide to run. Of course, if it's one of an emergency is different. But it shouldn't be that people feel that they can interrupt your family time. They can interrupt you when you're doing something, and that's okay for you to do. So yeah, I totally get the point, and I understand. And from the person that I've seen and know Pastor Matthew to be, I can tell that family is a priority to him. And you can tell that even though he travels a lot, that the way that he treats his family and they feel around him, you know that there is love and community. It's not for show, and that's a wonderful thing.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Your thoughts on that point there. We've touched a lot on dual career, so I'm not going to emphasize that, but there's a particular question that I have here. Maybe I'll throw just one question quickly to Lavinia, and then Dr. Nova, maybe you can also comment there. Um, we talk about priorities, and yes, sometimes children come into the picture and all that. But do people sometimes feel like, why should I be the one who maybe has to stay back and then the other person move forward and things like that? For you, Lavinia, very quickly before Dr. Nova comments as well. Yes, you want the family to be a priority, but have you felt like sometimes you have to maybe cancel a trip or do something to just so that you can also accommodate your husband's side of things?
Um, I, I've had to do that a few times, but honestly, I haven't felt like, um, I'm losing out on or
Mm,
anything. And I think that's because I, my husband has been the one who's had to accommodate me a lot.
mhm,
Um, as I was saying recently at a function that I acknowledged him for calling himself he calls himself the motherest father in the world. And it's a debate whether in almost 25 years of marriage, whether the number of times I've been around is equals to 2 years or 2 years and 1 day. So
mm,
to say that I've been away most of the time,
mm,
and he's had to step in. Of course, other family members have been very helpful, but he's he's the one who usually cancel or shift a trip so that I can travel,
mm,
because For a long time, he was at a position where he was easier for him to negotiate his travels more than I could, and so I think that helped. So I haven't found myself, I haven't had to be in that situation, to be very honest. If anything at all, it's the other way around where
Right.
I'm thinking, why do I have to go for this trip? And I feel like I need the rest rather than, have to travel. So I think in that sense, but just to quickly pick on something, I think when you're talking, when you showed Pastor Matthew's video, just to say one of the things that I did, again, and this was on the work side, I had to take my team through a session on what on the term urgent and important, because my team, I mean, the field we work in, everybody works really hard. So I'm not. It's not like I'm the only one in that situation. But it got to a point where I had to say to people, okay, we are all facing the situation where we're all traveling a lot and dealing with conflicts and so on and so forth, which in itself can be stressful. But I had to sit the team down to say, you've got to understand that some things, a lot of things, or almost everything for us is important, but not everything is urgent. And so from that point, now it's a joke in the office where people say, I wanted to call you last night, but I was struggling to decide whether it was urgent or important. But now there's the consciousness and awareness. Before people call me, they would think about it. So I had to really do that. And I think for me, it was good because other people have also now learned from it and are also using that. So it's not everything is urgent. Everything may be important, but not everything is urgent. And I think slowly, I think me starting that has set off, something in the office where other people also are trying to adopt that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, Dr. Norva, if you can address the question, not necessarily in Lavinia's case, but a dual career and ensure that neither party feels they are sacrificing too much of their career, personal life. Because I had a lady, a parent, come on our Prime Focus program some time ago, and she says sometimes with family, one person has to decide to stay at home just so that you can give the children the best care. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the whole thing we I spoke about with unique life fusion. And it's a good point that was made about urgent and important. And the thing is, some things are not even urgent or important as well. But because you feel that you want to get your point across or say something, sometimes you make sure that you slide it in there, not realizing that you're pulling away from what is urgent and pulling away from what is important. So we have to be careful when you talk about making a sacrifice, when somebody says that I have to make a sacrifice or one person has to make a sacrifice, that should not be the case. It should be that we spoke and we decided together that especially at this point in time, it would be best if this person does it. If you feel like you are taking one for the team, um, and it's unended, you can feel very resentful in the future. Even if somebody has to stay home at this time, it could be that while you're home, you are doing things to advance your career, your knowledge. You can be building your network. You can start your own business. You understand? So if you look at it as a dong, then you will continue to be a Debbie Downer. But if you decide, you know what, there are ways of us making this a win-win, then that is what will cause both of you all to come out smiling on the other side.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I like the way you put it. It reminds me of what Lavinia said. There's changing the mindset about it.
Mm,
Being at home doesn't mean that you're unproductive.
100.
Yes. All right. Thank you. I'm going to go to the last set of questions. Dr. Nova, this is for you directly. If you can give us expert advice, you've already commented on the video.
Mm.
Um, from a professional standpoint, what are the most effective strategies? I know one size doesn't fit all, but maybe to our audience, a different diversity of the audience we have, what would be some very simple, maybe two, three things that people need to do to try and create this harmony? Because as he said, some people are balancing. I mean, I read a book once which said multitasking, because I used to say a lot about multitasking. They said multitasking is a myth, you know.
Diffuse awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what should be your what would be your key points in that
Mm.
area?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is time management. You have to understand that you have a certain amount of time and you want to manage it effectively. If you don't do that, then you'll find yourself being pulled here and there. And sometimes when you get pulled and you're busy doing something, you are not as effective as you can be because you're really needed somewhere else. So
Hmm.
that's the first one. Setting boundaries as well is important so that people respect you. You also respect yourself and you show other people that you respect them. And also making sure that you have a network. Network is not always family, and it's not always friends, and it's not always, or you don't start off always knowing the people. But if you begin to build a community of people that after a while you can support each other, then that's a great way to go. As you said, somebody said earlier on, it's not everywhere we go, you have family close by, but sometimes neighbors and friends and your
That's
church
true.
community, you can begin to find people where you literally feel as though it's as close as family, so
All
that you
right.
could even give these people your house keys and feel comfortable. Know that
Mm-mm.
if something is going wrong, you can call on them. Yeah, you need that. And also, one last thing, delegate. It's
Okay.
important that you don't try to do everything yourself, but you get that help and support. You ask for help. As Les Brown said, you ask for help not because you are weak, but because you want to remain strong. And you don't stop until you get the help that you're asking for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
I'm just, as you're talking there, I was also looking at some of the comments in the chat. And right, they're talking about you got to learn how to manage your own emotions as well, so you don't have a feeling of being overwhelmed. I think quality, not quantity. I can see it also being put in the chat there. Um, thank you. So the commendations there for for all the panelists. Let me come to I think the last two questions, Dr. Nova. Um, in workplaces, we all can't be in France, but think about the different scenario. I mean, there are so many scenarios that we can't talk about all this today, but think about paternity leaves and all the other. How can employers better support their employees? Madison has a gracious team at work where they understand. They said they all have families, so they can understand these things. But
Mm.
not every place is like that. So, what can organizations do to try and help? Because at the end of the day, for us who live in places like the UK, the social services, it suffers because people have to
Mm.
work, they're leaving their family home and all that, and it becomes a spiraling thing. So, how do you think help can be given in terms of from the employer side of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I'll say is that COVID did us a plus in terms
Mm,
of allowing employers to see that people can work from home and be productive.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
before was almost a big no-no
Mm.
for many people.
Yeah.
And so that is a lovely thing. If we can um, if people who have they're set in their mindset of you must come back out to work, you must do things a certain way, if they are open to educating, being educated, that would be a good thing. So I know a lot of organizations now, they're inviting people to come in and speak to the staff about work-life balance. Sadly, sometimes you can come speak to the staff about it, but then the powers that be, HR and the others, sometimes they're not taking on board what you are teaching, what they have you telling other people. So they want to put it into practice and then HR stops them. So if they can listen to what is being shared and begin to take some of those things on board, it would be good. I think some policies need to change in some places. And for every country, it's different. As we could hear, France seemed to be the place to be right now, in terms of what is being offered, But in the UK, sometimes as employees, if you can come together and begin to make demands, begin to say, these are the things that we are facing, and it cannot be one person going. If one person goes, then you just don't, you're not listened to. But if a few people can come together and not disrespectfully do it, but in a respectful way, say these are some of the issues, and also come up with some solutions. So don't just say, I don't like and I don't like. Can we consider this? Maybe three options or something. Then it might be something they'd be willing to take on board. But they have to be willing to hear employees, but they wouldn't hear one employee. They will hear a few. So letting people come together and make their demands known, or their voices heard, that would help, I think.
Brother X, can I just
Yes,
add to that? I
sure.
think a
Yes.
lot more employers now in the UK are recognizing flexi time. So if you're working somewhere, do check, because there is that recognition for flexi time, and there's parental leave, and there's all other benefits. They may not be discussed. And my message to employers is, if you're not offering that, you may not be able to attract the best talent available. There's a report done about a couple of weeks ago from Deloitte, something else on the Harvard Business Review a couple of months ago, stating that if you want to attract generation Y and Z, the best thing you can do is offer flexible working, because they are very much into their self-care. So that's my message to employers as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think I've been told there's a government policy coming up just in the line with that, that employers should give the flexi thing to people. Yes. So wonderful. Nova, before I throw the last question to you, I just wanted to pick, I think, two questions in the chat very quickly, if we can address it. I almost thought I've lost one of them, but right. Okay. I'm just going to put it, well, it's for anybody really. Is there a role for AI in work-life harmony?
I think I'd like
100,
to tackle that.
Artificial intelligence.
yes, for sure. Because the thing is, with AI, it is causing a long story to be cut short. So there are things that we would have taken a long time researching and that kind of thing. If you can't tap into these things and don't see it as voodoo or wrong, because some people, they're just so scared of it and they have nothing good to say about it, not realizing actually you better see it as a helper. You understand? Like, yeah, you have to know your stuff. You must know what you're about. But sometimes, even while you're doing things, you can get a brain fog, brain freeze, as somebody said. And that just helps you to remember things that is already inside you, but it prompts you. And then you add things. I use AI all the time for different things, even so many other tools there that can help. I mean, I've even heard now about virtual assistants that are really virtual. Um, so yeah, it's not being afraid of these things, but being willing to learn and being willing to unlearn some things that you knew before. Not thinking that because there are 10 steps that I used 5 years ago, I have to use 10 steps now when it's just 3 steps that other people are using, because you will become redundant very quickly. Yeah, so you have to be
Okay.
careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that. The conversation at the moment, I think, is yes, there is, in work-life balance, there is space for AI, but really we've got to think about using it ethically, especially
Of
in the
course.
academic space. There needs to be that ethical consideration towards it. But yes, absolutely, if there's a question you have, rather than Googling for hours, I think go on ChatGPT, make your slides. If it's going to be done in 5 minutes, go ahead and do that. But if you're in academia, do think about it in an ethical manner. And it just takes you saying to people, I have actually used AI for this section. I don't think anybody minds.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Yes, I remember Towella, you had said earlier on about tools that are there that we need to learn how to use. So
Yes.
to all my friends, Gen X and beyond, please don't be afraid of the technologies. Use them. Your diary systems and all that, they're all very helpful to us. There's a question, I think we've addressed part of it, but I'm still going to put it up there. It's being asked here. It says, how do you manage work-life balance while working from home, and what strategies do you use to set boundaries? And I believe, Joseph, you addressed part of that already, didn't you? But is there any other thing that one can do? I think, Towella, you and I had a conversation, or you spoke to a team of ours some time ago about understanding to draw the boundaries at home mentally to know. Yeah, I think we
Yes.
had that conversation before.
Yes, I think
Yes.
it was similar to what Joseph said.
Right.
Because most of
Okay.
us now are working from home, but your bedroom is just
Mhm.
2 minutes away from your desk. So it's yes, it's again, having that, you're out of office. Do not disturb on my phone. I've found that so amazing since I discovered that from my teenage children, actually, because they use that all the time. You try
Mm,
to get through to them, you can't,
Too
and you
much.
think, what's going
mm,
on? Yeah, they use
mm.
it too much. And you think, what's going on? I had it on do not disturb. And I thought, oh, that's a really good thing. I think I'll be using that. So that's another one where at 8 o'clock, do not disturb will come on. Some apps will close. You can do so many things with your iPhone. So I
Mm,
think Joseph covered it really, really comprehensively earlier.
yes.
I wanted to add something as well.
Yes. Okay.
I just wanted to add about what everything has been said, but this question about discipline as well.
Yes.
One has to discipline himself, you know, because if you can't, especially I'm more talking about working from home. I think if we allow ourselves to, I would say, not set the boundaries and own, and actually not respect the boundaries. If we don't respect the boundaries, then that's when it becomes difficult to actually even set them up, because there's no point of setting the boundaries and then you're not going to respect it, and then it creates more and more and more dysfunction than more than order in what you want to do. So I would say discipline is very important, because I've actually found myself having to discipline myself, where I allow myself to work from Monday to Friday, whether or not I'm finishing at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or even 4 p.m., I am doing this work. But then when it's the weekend, I'm not gonna touch on anything. I know our jobs can be different, but if you do have a job where it doesn't need you to be working over the weekend, then this is where you need to prioritize the weekend. And for example, for my husband, something I maybe I should have said earlier is that we actually reorganize our schedules, because he does sometimes some moving, but he's changed his moving to facilitate when I am in. So if I'm in, that's when he can move and actually go around different countries and do the work he needs to do. And then also he has accommodated like his time, so that if I'm here during the daytime, he can maybe go during the evening and work. He can start working during the evening, and having that kind of, um, I would say, should we say shift, daytime shift, night shift, does help, because he also during the daytime will pick up and drop the kids, and then in the evening I will take the role in. So that those are the things as well that help as well, if you are able to have that in place
Mm,
with your partner, or even if you don't have a partner, that you're a single parent. I wanted to touch up about what Dr. Nova said as well about having a community. I also found good neighbors that actually, if there is a little quack, say one day Mister has forgotten to pick up the kids and told me that it's my turn to pick up the kids, I can quickly call my neighbor and say, is it possible for you to pick up the kids? Because I'm going to promote France again, but the primary school is actually 2 minutes from my doorstep. So it's literally a walking hand. So I would say that there's a lot of benefits in France. So yes, come to France for anybody that's interested.
Yes. Thank you.
Just to chip in a
Yes.
bit, I think these are very salient points that have been raised so far. For someone who's been working from home for the last 6 years, I've come to realize that you need to be very conscious of the type of role that you're doing, right?
Mm,
I Some of my previous jobs in the past have been exceptionally demanding. I
mm,
enjoy what I did, but it's just so demanding that everything else around me was suffering. So sometimes you have to consider, do I still want to be in this role,
mm,
or do I still want to be
yeah,
with this organization? I could still find maybe another organization with a similar role, but with less of a demand.
yeah,
Sometimes it could come in the shape of a promotion. Yes, you would relish, moving up the career ladder, but some types of promotions come at a cost, right?
mm,
Suddenly you have twice the workload and you just don't have any time. And yes, you make a little bit more of money, but then at what cost, right? So think about
mm,
those things.
yeah,
Do a lot of research, especially if you're changing jobs. Don't just try to find out, what's the pay scale, what are the benefits. Yes, benefits in terms of time off, etc. That's fantastic. In my current role right now, there's my company offers something called DTO, which is discretionary time off, and I think more companies are starting to adopt this, where we don't have a cap on the number of leave days. Right, I literally took 36 leave days in the last year or so outside of holidays. So maybe I don't need to come to France after all. But the point is, look out for these type of benefits, right? As well as companies that I saw a company that was offering an attractive package, but everyone says say goodbye to your weekends because you're going to pretty much work the whole week, right? So avoid those type of things. In the past,
mm,
it was very glorified, especially by the Silicon Valley folk, to work 80 hours a week and all those things. They wear it as a badge, right? But the truth is that you don't tell the horror stories that come as a result of those things. So be careful what you find as attractive. And then also, as for those who specifically work from home, maybe you could consider afternoon naps. It's one of the biggest
mm,
hacks that I've
yeah,
discovered, right? That me being able to have a 15 to 20 minutes sleep
mm,
in the afternoon, not more than that. Otherwise, your body goes into a state of long sleep, like night sleep. Anything under 22 minutes is very powerful, because not
mm,
only do I wake up refreshed to tackle the rest of my day, but then at the end of the day, work day, I don't feel like a spent force, and I don't feel like the kids are getting on my nerves, or I just want them to go to bed quickly so I can rest, right? So if you work from home and you have the opportunity to take some time during the day, the middle of the day, you can go for a walk, but try to get a nap. It will do you a world of good. And then, so this is all on the employment side or on your work side. Now, if you think of the family side as well, some of the strategies you can take, one of the things I found useful is to practice responsible financial management, right? Some years back, I began to really pay attention to my finances. I had a spreadsheet. I started to put in every single, I made entries of everything that came in and everything that went out. I went through that journey of discovery to understand my finances and to plan better. It did help. But here's where it got interesting. I used to put in every single thing myself. So imagine the amount of time it took. But now there are AI tools, or there are finance management tools that are powered by AI that automatically do this tracking and expense calculations for me. So I better understand my money, I better understand where I am and all of those things. Now, what has this got to do with work-life balance? There are two things. One, I'm not spending that time trying to figure out my money situation myself. AI does it for me, so I focus on the other things. The second thing is that by being able to understand your money and plan effectively so that you can build what we call emergency funds, you can build rainy day savings and investments, it empowers you to actually make bold decisions. That if at any point in time, let's say your work becomes toxic, maybe you have a new boss who just shift all their responsibilities to you, or there's a change in organization and you're in a different team and suddenly you just cannot cope with work, you can now afford to say, hey, I think I need to step away from this role and try and find a different role in a couple of months. I know people who have actually looked at their financial situation and gone, you know what, I'm just going to quit now before this drives me crazy. And so for a period of a month or two, they are not earning, but because they have made the right choices, their family is not impacted. And then they have taken on a new role in a different organization that actually gives them the time and the latitude to spend with their family. So these are things to consider, right? How you give yourself the room. If you don't practice good financial management, you find yourself in a situation where you desperately need that paycheck, and no matter how stressful work is, you're just sucked in. You can't shift, you can't do anything about it, and it's constant misery. So these are some of the strategies to cope with work-life balance, especially if you work at home.
Hmm. Awesome. Wow. We could keep going on this. I'm mindful of the time that we've gone way beyond this. It was like we couldn't stop it. But thank you all so much for that. Looking at the comments there, I see people have enjoyed it. Please share this with other people. Even if you just listen to just one of the panelists, you can go away with something. And to have five, including our coach. It's wonderful. Dr. Soji says power naps, great advice. Yes, true. Dana, thank you so much for that. Let me just put what Dana put up here. Working from home can be easier for a while, but after a certain time, overwhelm you if you work over the hours. Yes, but then she also goes on to say that you should learn to take regular short breaks. Joseph, I think that's part of what you were alluding to there. That's right. So, which can be very helpful rather than burning out. I notice that when I'm tired, I literally cannot do much. I can look at a piece of paper for an hour and nothing is going in. You just got to get up. But somebody, I know, I need to sit there. I need to be working. You're wasting your time. So learn to take those breaks. Right, we've gone over. I'm not going to Norva. Very last thing here in terms of people with all these extra commitments is learning to say no crucial.
100%.
Okay.
Just as much as learning to say yes is crucial, because sometimes fear can stop you from saying yes, and the same fear can stop you from saying no. Because, as I said earlier on, you can be afraid of what people would think about you. Your mind can start running, not realizing that people can respect you even more because you are setting clear boundaries. I think saying no on its own is not the best thing. Say no and explain to them why you said no so that they have a clear understanding of where you're coming from, but also be open to hearing what they have to say. Because sometimes you might say a definite no. And then by the time the person explains a little bit more to you, you might realize actually this is doable. You don't have to make a decision on the spot, but decide, let me go away, speak to my family, and then I'll get back to you. So let all of it be an opportunity for more dialogue, better dialogue with somebody. But think about yourself when you're doing all of that, and don't just try to be a people pleaser, but also don't be so negative or feel that you are less than, because sometimes you just think you can't do something, so that's why you're saying no when you have it within you to do it.
That's good. I like that. That's a very good balance there. Thank you, Dr. Nova. On that note, we're going to bring the program to a close. It's been very exciting, probably the longest run of Prime Focus episode. But as audience, I believe you have benefited something from this, and I'm sure there are others who can certainly benefit from one or other of the different experiences or the insights or strategies that came forward. The audience, thank you very much for join us. Dr. Nova, before we go, or on a last note, I know you provide services and you speak to audiences and all that. Would you be happy for people to contact you in terms of maybe some of the services you offer?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So what I will do, audience, I will put it the link in the chat afterwards in the description, so you can look at it and then follow or get in touch with Dr. Nova, and she can help you on a one-to-one basis or group basis, depending on which organization or not. To our distinguished panelists, we just want to say thank you to Madison, keep enjoying in France.
Merci
I know
beaucoup.
you're jumping off into another meeting. They've kept you here, but thank you very much.
Merci
Joseph, I'm going to
beaucoup.
let you go as well. Thank you so much. Um, uh,
Thank you too.
Dr. Towella, thank you so much for being with us and the insights you shared. Levinia, hope you can catch a few minutes to rest. And but thank you for being here. And of course, Dr. Norva, as always, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.